there. Welcome. This is the Thriving Life podcast with Jennifer Huff, which is me. And today we are exploring the idea of why would you want superpowers anyways? Isn't that like a fringe benefit? Isn't that like a side thing? Isn't it kind of like a frivolous thing to do to understand superpowers? Darn it, like you're just trying to get by in life, right? Why superpowers? Goodness sakes. But in truth, these superpowers are very dynamic and they are responding. They are actually responding to the crazy times. The superpowers are being upgraded with every piece of polarity, every problem that happens in this world. We're being offered the abilities that would have us navigate it all with ease and flow. Wouldn't that be interesting if you could navigate it all with ease and flow? What? So, anyways, I'm so happy that you're here. Remember, I'm watching the comments the whole time and responding to them. And even if you're watching us on replay, I'm so happy you're here. And we actually happen to be in the middle of an innate abilities class, and it is an awesome class. We're on day 4 and getting huge feedback. I'm so excited. People are just eating it alive. So excited to be there. And if you're not in that program, we will have it available afterwards. As a product for sale that you can actually do. We have 2 innate abilities programs now. All right, you guys, but that's not really what this is about. This is really about an interesting dynamic that's happening in the world right now, which is people are being basically siloed into 2 camps. And see if this is you. So, and let me know in the chat if this is you. If you're watching this happen, if you're observing this happen. They're either someone that's playing this game of sideism, right? So there's these sides that are going on where they're arguing for limitations or arguing for which history is correct or trying to convince other people to come over to their side, whatever that is. Or you're being siloed into this camp of, I just want to create going forward. I want to create the world that is being birthed from all the polarity. I want to be the one that actually paves the way to what's possible because of what I'm witnessing in humanity. I want to be fed by the polarity to be more inspired and more creative and to land within my heart and within my actions that which is being asked for because the world is the way it is. I want to be creator consciousness in human form. I wonder which door you're going to, Eliza, door number 1 or door number 2? Apparently door number 2. So guys, which way are you headed? Which path are you choosing? And you'll see yourself, trust me, you will see yourself trying to be right that something's wrong, right? You'll see yourself picking a side. And then all of a sudden you'll realize, ooh, I'm either adding to the sideism or I'm doing something called creating a third entity. I love the idea of creating a third entity. We started talking about that probably 8-10 years ago. I remember I was in a workshop and I remember the idea of the third entity coming through. And the third entity is what's being created when there's sideism. Consciousness is watching the polarity. Quantum physics, the field, is feeling the polarity. I mean, that's an anthropomorphism because honestly, quantum physics doesn't feel. It's just straight, photons and quarks and all that kind of stuff. But there's a communication, there's information being exchanged about sideism and all of a sudden what wants to be created, right? what wants to be created is actually already being created in the field. In the laws of entanglement, I mean, you always have, something spinning to the left over here and something spinning to the right over there. But as soon as something starts spinning up here, it's spinning down there. There is always this beautiful simultaneous problem solution happening in the field, which means that in the field, the solutions from the problems and the polarities that have already been experienced by us, the instant there's a problem, that's the instant there's a solution. And we have to decide as human beings whether we're going to be in the camp of having fun being creators, which is what we were born to be, right? And as creators, as literal, actual, made in the image of, as the Bible says, there's science says, the Bible says, fractals say, everything says that we are made in the image of that which creates. And what that means is we were born to create. Now think about it for a moment. Is creativity coming from arguing about sides, or is that arguing from the perspective of the past? So you're not really creating forward. You're not creating a path or a future when you're arguing about sides. Or are you acting upon what's being birthed from the polarity? Are you giving yourself the spaciousness to be able to let drop in the third entities, which can come moment by moment? You can live every day moment by moment. So I want to tell you a little story about this. Just wanted to share a little story, because what we're going to talk about the rest of this podcast is we're going to talk about what really are superpowers, because that's a nice catchphrase, but what the heck does that actually mean, right? Second thing is, why do they matter in times of great change when there's polarity? How are they involved in actual, flow and creativity? And finally, what can one do to be available if one presumes that using your superpowers has you absolutely be ready to not only take on what's happening in the world, not with a fight, not being motivated by the polarity, but I want you to know that the last little piece we're going to talk about is going to be how to get to a place where you're actually inspired. I know it's hard to get this, but imagine if you actually had the capacity to be inspired by the futures that are being created through the polarity. What would happen then? Then you would have true freedom. That's what would happen. Do you know I got this t-shirt probably 15 years ago? I know it's one of those shirts. 15 years ago. It's made of bamboo. And I saw this girl that was creating these awesome t-shirts. And this really is an awesome t-shirt. And I've had it repaired. I've had it sewn up like so many times because I love it so much. True freedom is not bestowed upon us by any kind of leadership. True freedom is bestowed upon us because we have a creative mind and we can literally get out of the jail of polarity because we're walking receptors with 75 trillion cells with receptor sites that receive from all of consciousness. We were born to be inspired. So that's the third thing we're going to talk about, is how do you get to a place where consistently, instead of being motivated by the fear of what might happen to humanity, imagine that you could grow so much bigger than what's happening that you would be inspired forward. Just let yourself feel into that. And I'd love to hear from you what that feels like. The possibility of getting to a place where you're consistently bigger than the circumstances and you're in your knowing, being inspired forward by some nebulous future that maybe you can't even feel. What if you could consistently do that? What? And I just want to do a little shout out to Mary in California. Thanks for joining us. I'm glad your word is resolved. This is something I'm resolved to for sure, what we're talking about today. All right, just a little story, okay? All right. So I remember when I had a very large integrative health clinic. But I didn't ever have an intention. This is where we divert from the common, law of attraction-y conversations. I had exposed myself to a tremendous amount of toxicity because I couldn't afford to finish the bottom of my boat, the boat which I was living on. So you got to get, when my boyfriend and I split up, I kept the boat and I decided to live on it. It was so, because all sorts of people were living on their boat, on their sailboats in this particular marina in Toronto. And I was living on it. It was really quite amazing, I got to say, and very freeing, very freeing. But from the point of view of you can't fit very much stuff on a boat. And I loved that. I loved that I didn't have a lot of stuff. It was very freeing. And what happened is that once I realized I had osmosis, which can really damage the hull of your boat, the bottom of your boat, and I knew that I couldn't afford, I thought, okay, it's an adventure. I'll go and do it myself. I'm going to clean the bottom of my boat myself. Why not? And I'm going to repaint it. And I knew that a lot of the bottom paints were really toxic, but I'm so funny. I don't know, I was probably 27, 28 years old. And you get a little cocky at 27, 28. And I was going to finish the bottom of my boat, but I was going to do it. You have to wear full protective gear. But I'm doing this in the middle of the summer. And I thought, oh, it's too hot. So I'm in shorts and a tank top. And I'm sanding off all of this bottom of the boat. And all of this epoxy stuff is getting all over my skin. Then when I go to do the cuprous oxide mixture on the bottom of the boat, which helps keep away certain barnacle type things, I also didn't wear the protective gear. And as a result, that got all over me. And and I was also an aerobics instructor at the time, and that stuff got all over me. And when I would go and teach a class, after about 5 or 6 classes that I taught, the sweat would bring out the toxins and I would have welts all over my skin. Thank God I exercise now that I think about it, because the only way to get rid of that oil-based toxin in your skin is to actually work out. But I would go to the doctors and they would have no clue what to do. I mean, they wanted to give me steroids in order to get rid of the inflammation, but I wanted to get rid of the toxicity. So this is the first time. So this is where the inspiration came from, to go holistic. That's why I started the largest integrative health clinic in Canada, because I got so sick. So that's a contrast that birthed me into a direction in my life that could have killed me, but instead it redirected me. And I ended up being on TV. I ended up, being interviewed by all sorts of people. In the meantime, though, before all of that happened, I still had to deal with these welts and this crazy stuff that was all over my body. And I was getting migraines, and it was horrible. And I found a couple of geniuses who helped me to transcend and transmute. And I felt better. And in fact, my biological age reduced by 15 years by doing all the protocols that I did, which is why I had such a passion for, healing and health and all of that kind of stuff. I had this passion because it saved my life. And it changed the rest of my life. So was it bad or was it good? And it really depends. So I started to be inspired by what got birthed from my illness. Do you understand? And from that inspiration, it's almost like the inspiration took over the polarity and it won out over the polarity. But I had to work on seeing what was possible from knowing that I could make that big a difference for humanity. And that was right. That was 25 years ago. 22 years ago. That was right in the beginning of people sort of moving to holistic things. And I felt so incredibly blessed. And so you have to know that every time there's polarity, where life doesn't look very good, what is being birthed is the opportunity of that kind of thing. But the clue is we got to start to get present to it. Don't worry, I'll get to the superpowers in a second. I just want to make sure that at first, I was motivated by the fear, but eventually that fear turned into complete and total inspiration. I just became so excited by the possibility of helping so many people didn't have any tools. And I started studying biological terrain, and I started studying psychoneuroimmunology, and I started studying biophysics, and then I started studying physics. And then all of a sudden I realized from all of this that the way I was teaching, so here's another polarity, it's like people would have to be on supplements and detoxifying themselves and changing their food the rest of their life. And we're back in jail again. And it was the same for me. I would have to eat that way the rest of my life. And I thought, I don't think that's the way that a creative universe birthed us. I actually think that we think and know that we were given all the tools to be able to make permanent cellular shifts. And as I started to understand through a German medicine doctor about CAT scans and how we think affects the paradigms in our brain, which affects our biochemistry, and then working a little bit with Bruce Lipton and all of those people, this 2 decades ago, I realized that the permanent cellular shifts would only happen not if people would change their beliefs. It started that way. That was the course I taught called Get Out of Your Own Way. But what if, now listen, just take a deep breath in. Just consider this. I really want you to consider this. That actually you can change the entire paradigm through which you understand life. The entire paradigm through which you understand life. And hundreds of beliefs will change at a time without you have to address them individually. Isn't that cool? I mean, isn't that phenomenal? Like you can literally change hundreds of beliefs at a time by changing the entire context through which you live life. And that's what happened for me. That's when I truly broke free. When I started to change the entire paradigm. Because a paradigm is only a bunch of beliefs that have been conglomerated together, synthesized. And then you have a whole paradigm about what it is to be a white woman in North America, or what it is to be a human being on planet Earth, or what it is to live in a human society. Or what if you changed the entire, it is a heck of a hack, dude. But you see, my brain, I don't know if your brain is wired for this. My brain is wired for efficiency. I have lots of ancestors that were engineers, and all of those engineers have this crazy ass idea that everything's got to be efficient. Now you combine that all, which is why I love to teach. I started to collect evidence about how there's always a way. It doesn't matter what's wrong, there's always a way. I started to collect evidence for how there's always a way. And as I collected evidence, I saw that through the laws of physics, that there is always solution for every problem. Always. So you combine the idea of entanglement with physics and the fact that you can't have a problem without a solution. And I start collecting evidence relentlessly that there's always a way. And I combine that with, I'm not interested in shifting people's beliefs one at a time. I'm interested with shifting my and everyone else's paradigms such that hundreds of beliefs. It's like the quantum computer of transmutation, right? I realized that what we were doing was very different from what else was happening out there in the world of evolving and becoming who we really are. And then what happened was, if there's always a way, because I have so much evidence and the laws of physics work the way they work, then the tools we need to navigate that new world, where the framework for how we view this world is one of freedom and creativity, but you got to change your entire paradigm for that, right? I mean, that's why the Wide Awakening does what we do. But once you get there, another way in, I thought, was through your suit. See, can you get that? Can you get that in a time where there are no AIs or quantum computers or cryptocurrencies, where we're moving more slowly, maybe the time right before computers got invented? That the way we were navigating life, the framework we had for life, was based on, you had a handheld phone. Your phone wasn't a computer. Think of how much slower it was then. You probably don't realize, if you're over 45 or 40, you probably don't realize how much slower life was then. And that all the hoops you had to jump to in order to make things happen. But you're becoming a more efficient and efficient creator because we keep creating more efficiency tools, which is really great. But your way of being had to make a quantum leap. And I lived through that. And now I get to live through, along with you, this other quantum leap that we're going through because of an evolution in computing, an evolution in, blockchain. And there's so many things evolving, and we're making a quantum leap, but our beingness has to change to match that. It's like before you rode a bike, you were on a tricycle. Well, you don't need to know the superpower of automatic balance when you're riding a tricycle. But when you move to a bicycle, at first it's a quadricycle because you got training wheels. And with the training wheels, you're learning how to balance. And at some point you learn the balance, and you can take your wobbly, but you can take the training wheels off, and all of a sudden a whole new world opens up to you of mountain biking and road racing, and you can now ride a motorcycle. So with superpowers, it's exactly the same way. So what are some superpowers that what do you think are some superpowers? I'm going to give you, one of the superpowers is to be able to bring through and evolve your abilities as the human condition changes. So one of your superpowers is to be able to create new superpowers. Isn't that fun? Collectively, we do that because we have problems that we can't solve. And so what happens is our habits and beingnesses start to evolve. And so did mine. In my practice, all of a sudden, I started to be able to see people medically intuitively. I knew exactly why they had the illness that they had, whether it was spiritual, emotional. I still have that ability because I embodied it from working with thousands of people. But I started asking consciousness, well, am I special, or can everyone do this? And I had a series of wakened dreams that came back to me and said, by the way, everyone can also have wakened dreams. And I realized that, oh my God, it's like we have multidimensional genetics that give us characteristics beyond our three-dimensional selves. And those multidimensional genetics can actually create new multidimensional genetics for every time we evolve. So the first question I was going to answer was, what is a superpower? That's what a superpower is. It's a multidimensional ability, like me being able to see people medically intuitively. That then went through an iteration, a change up, where I could see people holographically. Not only could I see what was going on with their health, but I could see all the way back through every lifetime and all the way forward, given all of their choices, which ones are more in alignment and which ones are less in alignment, and helping them to ask the questions, not giving them the answers. That's another innate ability, the ability to ask powerful questions that would have people come to their own conclusions, because then they can embody and they're not giving their power away to me or anybody else. The time for gurus is over. How do you ask questions that actually help people embody themselves, embody their own superpowers, instead of running around going to people who you give your power away that you think are smarter than you? Isn't that part of the trouble we're in right now as humanity, giving our power away to people that we think know better? Nobody knows better than your own vortex. So then another superpower comes along, which is one of my favorites. Now this is a deeper discussion. If you've never heard me speak before, maybe we do a podcast on this. But in the laws of physics, there is only now. I mean, everything is made from quantum particles at the biggest Russian doll, the biggest layer of existence. There are only quantum particles. So from the place of quantum particles, anything can be created based on how creative we get. And then those waveforms and quarks and photons talk to each other. And based on our forward intention, new futures are created in the field. So one of your superpowers is to be able to deliberately and consistently catch up with the futures that have been created that have a sense of inevitability. Do you ever have that feeling like something's coming, or that you're designed for a certain future, or you can feel this sense of urgency inside, but you can't see it yet? You don't know it yet? That's the feeling. Get this. That is the feeling of that future that humanity, or you, or both of you, have created into the field. And it's calling you, and you're not quite ready with your skill sets or with whatever to be able to see it fully with your mind's eye. That feeling of urgency inside. Have you ever had that? I'd love to hear from you. Maybe you're having it right now. The feeling of urgency is not something to be frustrated by. That's a misinterpretation of the energy. Right? That's a misinterpretation of the energy. The truth is the future's calling you, and the frustration that you're misinterpreting is actually the excitement from that future. Interesting, right? So these are your superpowers. There are the ones that we've brought through. There's probably over 60 that we've talked about, and you can embody them all. And there are hundreds that we haven't talked about that we're not ready for yet. I mean, I love seeing them, but we're not ready to embody that yet. We got to move a little bit as humanity in order to embody all of those. And and ticket to bliss, what if you're feeling in the void? What if you're feeling in that spacious place? Maybe it doesn't feel so spacious. What if you're feeling the impatience that Susan is talking about? Which is the difference between feeling the future calling you and feeling the energy of that. Then you want to first reinterpret that energy and know that the sense of urgency is the validation that that future is inevitable and that it exists. If you can just embody that it's inevitable and that it exists, let that be your new knowing. Your new knowing is you can't have that feeling of urgency inside unless the future already exists that you're excited about. Okay, that's number one. The second thing you do is you start to do things that already feel like that feeling, right? They already feel like that, like things that so for instance, for me, I go out and garden, or I climb the side of a mountain, or I, have an amazing bubble bath, or the more you do things that put you in the frequency of that which you perceive you're headed towards, the more you collect evidence for your blessedness, the more you're training your biology to communicate. It communicates through many things, but one of them is through photons that go out through out to consciousness, that actually communicate to consciousness, that quantum field, that you are interested in feeling that way more. Your action steps. That's why intention, you're a walking intention. You don't need to intend with your mind. Your life is its own intention. What you're living and what you do day by day tells consciousness what you're interested in more of. And you're either doing more of what you're headed towards, or you're consistently complaining about what you want less of. But the more you worry about, complain about, and are fearful of it. So the action step, the first few action steps are very simple. And definitely, gosh, I really recommend that, there's a free version of our community where you can do the first few innate abilities, the first few superpowers. They're very foundational, I would say. And you can go to agentsofawakening.com and actually get into the free version of our community right now. And you'll be just pay attention, because there's an upcoming awaken conversation with me where you're going to ask questions directly of me, and we can tap into the field together. And that is coming up, I do believe, real soon. We do it monthly, but when you join for free, you get the first month at no charge, and you can join the community at large later after that. So I hope this has been helpful, everyone. I hope this has been helpful. I love helping people. I love so much helping people to, with efficiency and ease and flow, find that path to fluidity. Not only that, but as Marielle was saying, really be able to embody those superpowers. Why? Because it's fun. Because it's awesome. Because it makes you into a really fluid, badass creator. And because that's what we're here for. And, that's what I was born for, to assist people to embody that. And you're so welcome, Susan Spillman, PhD. All right, you guys. So on that note, I look forward to seeing you in Agents of Awakening, and can't wait for next week's Friday. Remember, we do these every Friday. We skipped last week because my internet was terrible, and I'm so sorry. We didn't even have time to do an announcement that we were missing it. But next week, join us some more. We'll be talking about a few of those innate abilities anyways. Next Friday, 1:00 Eastern time. Put it on your calendar and come and play, okay? All right, you guys. Love you so much, and we'll see you next time. Big, squishy, ridiculous, stupid hugs. Bye.